With less than 3 weeks to go until Election Day, the campaign rhetoric is heating up as both candidates focus on the battleground state of Michigan today. Nicole Sganga has details from the White House.
Former President Donald Trump kicked off his day with a stop on Fox and Friends in New York.
I don't think she knows where she is. She's a low IQ person. She's not smart. Everyone knows that.
It was the same criticism he levied against Vice President Kamala Harris during the Al Smith charity dinner last night, where speakers traditionally trade gentle barbs.
We have someone in the White House who can barely talk, is a person that has nothing going, no intelligence whatsoever, but enough about Kamala Harris.
Harris appeared at the dinner in a pre-recorded video. She was campaigning in Wisconsin, where she had her own laughs about Trump saying he was the father of IVF.
What does that even mean? He has no idea what he's talking about. When it comes to the health care of women in America.
Harris and Trump both hold rallies in the Detroit, Michigan area tonight at the same time. Early voting in that key battleground state kicks off tomorrow. Ahead of her rally, Harris will meet with auto industry union workers.
We must create good paying jobs that are available to all Americans and not just those with college degrees. Okay?
She'll also get help on the campaign trail from former President Barack Obama, who is holding a rally in Tucson, Arizona tonight. A new CBS News poll in the state shows Trump with a slight edge over Harris. Nicole Sganga, CBS News, the White House.
Harris is the first presidential nominee to skip that Al Smith dinner. Both former President Obama and his former First Lady are expected to campaign with Harris next week.